Hey beauties, and welcome back to Aesthetic Chat with Kiki. I'm your host, Kiana Gamble, and this is episode 3 of season 6. We are back with Rebecca, and she is, so far, I'm honestly blown away with how much that I've learned from her just from one 45-minute conversation with episode 2. But she has even more information to share with you all, especially when it comes to running a practice, buying devices, launching a device. So this next part of the conversation is really exciting because we're going to be talking about growing a practice when it comes to bringing on different treatments and even bringing on staff. So tune into this episode. Excited for her to be back on, and enjoy. Okay, everyone, we are back with Rebecca. She's already given us such great advice when it comes to being a small practice or even potentially opening up your own practice. But I'm actually really curious to hear her thoughts navigating purchasing devices, just because the capital that you need to have up front for some of these devices can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for a small business like myself, when you're talking about bringing on a device, looking at the cost or the number of patients you have to treat to pay that device off, it's a very daunting number when you're looking at a device like a laser that's $200,000, $300,000 or more. So how does somebody in my position navigate bringing on a device like that? And I know you're going to talk to us a little bit about the nuances when it comes to even negotiating with laser rep.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is really asking these tough questions to yourself and having the answers before you even start reaching out to talk to laser reps or investigate different devices. Because once they know you're interested, they will not leave you alone. I think that
they won't even leave you alone if you're not interested.
Yep. So for 20 years, the ongoing joke has been the best way to get rid of a laser rep is to buy a laser. So it is very true. But, and there are some good actors out there, but there's few and far between. I think you have to ask yourself a couple of really important questions before ever even making the idea of going to test drive, demo, do any of those things. So for one, I think sometimes, like you said, things that are out in the marketplace, now we're seeing that this device is all over TikTok. People are getting results. Now that device is being negatively spoken about because of a certain influencer. You really have to not look at any of that. You have to block out the noise and say, if I strictly look at my patients, who I'm treating, what am I missing in my toolbox? And that's going to be different for every practice because it's going to be dependent on your patient demographic, meaning the money that they're spending, meaning the makeup of Fitzpatrick types you may have, meaning the age that you could possibly have. There are 74,000 different combinations of patients you can have that not one device is ever going to treat. And also the area that you live in. You're going to see a lot more sun damage on the West Coast in the southern states than we may see in the Northeast or the far north, upper Midwest. We're going to see more rosacea and drier skin in the areas like Chicago, where I'm from, Minnesota, Indianapolis, a lot of wind, a lot of harsh winters. So it's going to really depend what your clients need to get the best results. So you need to say to yourself, okay, I'm getting excellent results with my tox. I'm getting excellent results with my filler. Maybe I'm doing some sort of thread. Maybe I'm doing, whatever it might be. But all of my patients are coming to me and saying that they have a really bad skin texture. Or I've clients with a lot of wrinkles. And then in another case, I've got a lot of clients with sun damage, a lot of clients with rosacea. I have a lot of clients who are on Ozempic. Now I have a lot of loose skin. I have a lot of clients that are of a certain age who are pre-jowling, looking at what are your clients potentially going somewhere else to get, and then say to yourself, okay, that treatment makes the most sense. I've narrowed the field for all the treatments that are out there. And then with that specific device, letting me look at maybe what's out there. So never let a rep come in and tell you what you need. They're all going to tell you their laser can do all of the things, and it's not true. So you never let a rep influence what device that you purchase. The only influence on purchasing a device is what your patients are going to purchase, what you need to provide the best outcomes for your patients. That's it. The number one mistake that people make is buying a device that a rep told them is going to be the next ATM machine, and it either does one thing or it maybe doesn't work that well, and there's a lot of different factors out there, right? I said over and over in all of the years that I sold lasers, would go to my bosses and say, I will not sell body contouring devices for you. I'll sell IPLs, I'll sell CO2s, I will sell RF, I'll sell RF microneedling. Don't ever ask me or give me a quote to sell body contouring. I don't believe any of it works. Or we oversell people, and maybe, some things do work, but we oversell providers on how many patients are going to be good candidates for these procedures.
Right.
And like you said, it is daunting to pay these things off. So if you are someone and you have 250 active patients and you're saying to yourself, I think I'm ready to buy this device, whatever device it is, X, we'll call it device X. Are 10% of your people candidates? Because if only 10% are candidates, maybe 1% actually buys the procedure. Or do you have 250 clients and 150 of them are candidates? Okay. Then you're more likely to convert. Are these one and done procedures? Is this maybe 250 people are candidates, all 250 get your procedure? That's great. But now we have to find new patients because this is a one and done procedure, right? So really looking at, and we'll go into overall cost of ownership and a lot of these other things too, but really looking at how wide, cast a really wide net, because at some point you have to be able to convert these patients into doing these treatments. So to me, and again, this is from my practice, from having 2 lasers and having laser rooms that were fully booked out to expanding to other procedures, is looking at what the patients really need. And in the end, it ends up being almost 9 times out of 10, IPL, skin resurfacing, some sort of skin tightening or collagen building. Certainly, people often will come to me and say, I want to dip my toe into lasers. I think I should do laser hair removal. I would argue that any device that does just one singular thing isn't the best first device to buy, because again, we're casting a really narrow net. So maybe only 50% of our patients haven't already gotten laser hair removal somewhere else, because we've been doing that forever. Or you buy the wrong device for the Fitzpatrick types that you're treating, or you buy, whatever it might be, it's going to be hard to recoup your investment. So to me, I really like the type of device, and they're called platform devices. There's several companies that make them. They're all relatively similar, that are going to have multiple hand pieces, so that in that one device, you can then say, I've got all these patients that need IPL for brown spots. I have all of these patients that need IPL for rosacea. I have all of these patients that need a 1064 nanometer vascular laser to treat ropey vessels. I have all of these patients who might do laser hair removal, right? Because that handpiece will be on there. Fine. Maybe there's tattoo on there. I always say IPL, 1064, and some sort of resurfacing. If you can at least do those 3 handpieces on a device, you will get paid back, because there's going to be acne scars. There's going to be patients who have deeper wrinkles than a tox or a filler are going to be able to treat, right? Especially when we talk about a lot of heavily sun damaged, kind of those cross-hatched lines. There's, you can treat stretch marks, you can treat bodily scars, you can treat C-section, those types of resurfacing lasers, and something superficial that's a prejuvenation procedure, all the way up to something that's like maybe a non-ablative fractionated, erbium or something along those lines. Meaning almost every one of your patients will be able to get some procedure with something like that. Right. But if you buy a device where it can only treat Fitzpatrick's 1 through 3, you eliminate a whole segment of the population that you cannot treat. Right? Maybe you buy a device that has a significant amount of downtime. You just eliminated a whole bunch of people who either socially, they can't do the downtime, or for work, they can't do the downtime. Then after that, you build upon that foundation. And I don't think if you're a solo provider, you need more than one device, because you can't be in 2 rooms at the same time anyway. So you're just sitting on 2 loans and you're only paying on one every time that you're doing a patient. So I think having a device that does multiple things in a singular room is the best way to maximize that investment as a solo provider, or even 2-3 people, right? Maybe you can delegate. In some states, you can delegate that away to somebody else so that you can inject while that room is being used by someone else. Some states you can't. The other critical mistake people make is believing the reps telling them that this device is either non-invasive or minimally invasive or safe to a fit 6, or you are able to perform it in your state. And I have had a number of clients come to me who found me from a viral post I wrote about the 10 mistakes people make when buying a laser is, well, I'm in X state. I went to this show from this company. I was there. They told me that this CO2 was non-invasive. CO2s are ablative devices. It's the 510K clearance. And in your state, if you can't do an ablative procedure, that's on you a little. We listen to the rep instead of doing our due diligence. There are a lot of claims with a lot of devices right now that are saying that they're safe for all 6 skin types, that are laser technologies that are quite literally unsafe for darker skin types. And maybe what that company has done is we've turned settings down, or we've changed a little something so that we say that we can treat these patients, but you run a risk, especially if you are delegating these procedures away, you run the risk of someone not paying attention to settings, maybe missing something on the screen before they do the treatment, and then you can physically cause harm because those treatments are not intended for higher Fitzpatrick types. I think maybe not everyone has an understanding of laser physics and what these wavelengths do and what's the right device for the right indication. I mean, I have seen people get sold that an RF device can do all of the things. Well, RF can't treat vascular, RF can't treat pigmentation. Or I've seen resurfacing devices. Well, sure, you might be able to get some superficial pigment, but you're never going to be able to pull up the same pigment in IPLs, and it's not going to do anything for vascular. So these devices are kind of marketed as these ATM machines, and they can do all of these things. And if you don't research and you don't know what does that wavelength do, what is it approved for? Have we seen that technology has social proof or industry proof because it's been around a long time? Is it safe to treat most of my patient demographic at the minimum, at least most, if not all? And am I even allowed to do this procedure where I live? Because that is the fastest way to have dumped 6 figures. And then now what do? Okay, so I have to hire an MD to run this device for me now. I have to sue the company to convince them to take it back. I mean, now we're just in it even deeper. I mean, the true I could tell you right now, laser physics 101, super fast, tried and true. You're going to have your 755 and your 1064 wavelengths are going to be your dual wavelength devices that are going to treat pigment and vessels, your IPL, pigment and vessels, your erbium, superficial resurfacing, your CO2, your deeper resurfacing. A lot of the other wavelengths that are out there are just things we've changed or different wavelengths we've tried. Maybe they're hybrid of different wavelengths, but those tried and true are going to be, again, at the very minimum, with the right training, you're going to be able to get any of those devices with those wavelengths to get the clinical outcome we're looking for. I don't always say that with things like ultrasound and RF. And although I guess in today's day and age, the RF microneedling devices have come pretty far. I would consider that pretty tried and true technology. There's some good ones out there, some bad ones, but a lot of these skin tightening treatments that are out there, they don't really work, or they work in a way that we have to, the patient suffers during the treatment because they're so painful or whatever it might be. So then we undertreat. I think if you're going to make an investment for the first time, it's those things I just said, those tried and true, they work, and then grow from there. You want to experiment with a new device down the line, fine. But anything that's come out in the last couple of years, I'd say no. Go for the ones that have been out a long time. They're going to work.
So say that the person has already gone through that personal deep dive. They looked at their clients. They're like, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy a laser. So talk me through that conversation that you now have with a rep that you've identified that you're like, yep, I want to buy your device. And they're like, okay, it's $300,000, because that's realistic, honestly.
It's realistic, and I hate to call any companies out by name. I've already gotten myself in
say company X.
Yeah. If we talk about platform devices specifically, because those can get very expensive when you're talking about a lot of handpieces. By the way, I do strongly believe in buying new from the manufacturer. There are one or two pretty good third-party sellers that actually, insure their devices, sell their devices, warranty their devices. We can talk about new versus used, but I would never buy from overseas. I would never buy from Alibaba. I would never buy from eBay. I wouldn't buy from even a business owner down the street who's selling their med spa. We're talking about the practice of medicine. You should really be buying these things from the manufacturer. So that said, for these platform devices of the US manufacturers or the US distributors that exist today, those devices are going to be anywhere between $75,000 and $350,000. I get heat for this all the time, but I will stand by it and I will die on this hill. They are not that different. Now, there's going to be some companies that spend more money on direct-to-consumer advertising, which means that their treatment name might be a treatment name out there, like how everyone calls toxins Botox, right? Because that's why everyone calls facial tissue Kleenex, right? So there are some treatments out there that have brand name recognition. I don't even believe that they're the best devices out on the market. I don't know that there is, and I definitely can tell you there's nothing better about them that is $350,000 better than $150,000 or $75,000. And often, again, because those devices are so expensive, for someone like yourself, or even a large, let's say a plastic surgery practice on Rodeo Drive, it is going to be very difficult to get a singular loan for a piece of equipment like that. So what ends up happening is we have to go through these capital leasing companies because our bank is not going to give us small business, even 850 credit score Rodeo. They're not going to give you $350,000 for a piece of equipment. Unlikely, maybe, unlikely. I haven't seen it a lot. So then you have to go through their leasing company. And what a lot of people don't know is that the leasing companies that the laser reps work with that are these capital leasing are private equity companies that are taking a risk. They full well know that a lot of these med spas go out of business. So they put you in extremely predatory loans. And what people don't know is that loan paper, you go to buy your house, right? Your loan paperwork is this thick. When you sign for a laser, you'll be lucky if there's this much on there because they've hidden all of the terms. And so you don't know what rate you're paying. And I have seen people buy a $250,000 laser, sign on the paperwork. I take a look at it after the fact. Okay, what's your monthly payment? Oh, it's $5,200. How long's your loan? 60 months. Did you know that you're paying $480,000 for that $250,000 laser? Did you do that, Matt? They don't disclose rates. They don't disclose terms. They often don't tell you, or they will tell you there's no payoff penalty. But actually what that means is if you pay it off, you're still responsible for all of the interest. This is not a loan like our mortgage where if we make double payments and we pay off earlier, we've saved a bunch of money. When you get into these predatory loans, I tell people all the time, now you're stuck in it. Don't ever pay it off early. You're going to now pay all of that interest no matter how you do it. So now don't use the rest of whatever liquid asset you have to pay something off just because you're upset at that loan. Now just pay it every month for the next 60 months. And it's a lesson learned because there's no penalty to pay it off, but you're not saving any money. The other issue that they don't disclose, and this is again, mistakes that if you've never done this before, you wouldn't know this, but deep in a lot of those T's and C's, are you actually putting a personal guarantee on that loan? It's go under. Now you have an outstanding $400,000 loan on your personal credit. I mean, and they go to different lengths. They may come repo the device. They may sue you. I mean, it depends on the company. I've seen it go lots of different ways. To me, if a device is so expensive that you can't get a loan from your bank who's going to give you very clear terms and a stack of paperwork this big, and because they know you as a business owner, so you're going to get the best rates. The device is too expensive for you to do that, then it's time to move on. If a device is cheaper, if it's only say $75,000, you go to your bank and they say no, because maybe business credit, we haven't been in business for 2 years, or business credit is a little low, or maybe personal credit's low. Maybe we've gone through a divorce. I've seen all sorts of this stuff happen, right? Then you're kind of forced to go with their lender. Today is not the day to buy a device. Again, I sold them and I used these lenders for years. And now I do this job as my penance to all of these people. But, it's not, when we talk about overall total cost of ownership over the course of the 5 years that you're going to pay for that device, there's going to be so much more than just the cost. So if you have a $75,000 laser or you have a $350,000 laser, have they disclosed to you up front what it's going to cost to pay for a warranty year over year? A lot of times they're cagey about that. If they don't come out and show you a service contract with pricing that's available for what the ongoing warranty is going to be, you could then find out we're done with year one. We've only made 12 months of payments. We still have 48 months of payments left. Now we owe them $15,000 for a warranty for one more year. Then year 3, 15, year 4, 15, year 5, 15. People always ask me, well, then shouldn't I just not buy the warranty if it's that expensive? If you had a car and you were still paying on it, would you not have a warranty? Would you not get a service plan? Would you not get regular oil changes? Of course not. Because if you owe money on it, it needs to work for the life of the loan.
That was my other thing. I think my fear is lasers in general just scare me. I think I've been pretty open about that on the podcast because I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And lasers is one of those things. Injectables is my wheelhouse and lasers is not. And my fear is lock into these 60-month loans. By the time you pay this device off, does it even work? Or you know what I mean? Now there's the next model coming out. You end up rolling that device, that payment into a new device, because then you have this other device, the older model that's just sitting there that's been paid off, but the bulb ran out.
Although I do find with these platform devices, there's a company that I used to work for that is still selling the same device that I sold 10 years ago, because there isn't much you can do to upgrade those standard wavelengths. There's not really much we can do to change IPL. Now, the exterior box might look sexier. We might have an easier to use interface, but often if those machines, those workhorses are in your practice, newer versions might have come out, but it's not going to make yours necessarily obsolete. But with these devices and all these hand pieces, there is also more that can go wrong, right? So the other issue that you run into is maybe not we have to go buy a new device because the newest one came out, but okay, here we are. I'm on year 5. I've just paid it off. Woohoo. Now every single dollar that I make on this device is profit. We're here. And then our IPL handpiece has timed out. Then, and so then you're paying. And these are repairs that they're unlikely to disclose to you. But things like motherboards, things like tubing, I mean, these things are thousands of dollar repairs. So yes, I mean, and that's why I think if you can't purchase something outright or get a very good loan from your bank, you will end up that this can never be profitable. Because if you look at paying 30% interest on a predatory loan over 5 years, plus the added amount that you've had to pay for a service contract or a warranty, plus whatever they tell you, you buy a bumper warranty, then, oh, wait, forgot to tell you that IPL handpiece, that bulb is gone. So that's not, you have to just buy a new one. That's not really something we can fix. So now we're replacing handpieces that weren't a part of the warranty. And never mind the companies out there that have the predatory practice of consumables. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe things like radio frequency microneedling, we have tips, we're going into the skin, we break sterility. Those things are, to me, that's a disposable. But telling me that I have to have a USB card or a key card, or I have to buy pulses, that is pure and simple the company eating into your profit. So if you have to buy a card and then that card expires because you didn't buy your treatment, and you got to buy another card to be able to do the treatment, those are all a money suck for your business. So you really need to know the overall overarching full cost of ownership if you're going to have this bad boy for 10 years. So the questions you have to ask are, I want to see a service contract. What are your warranty costs? I want them in writing, everything in writing, please. Nothing over text, nothing promised to you in a meeting, everything over email. What does it cost? Can I see a parts replacement price sheet? What is it going to cost when I have to have the trainer come back out because now I've hired somebody else? Because by the way, you buy a laser, 5 hand pieces, you get 1 day of training that's supposed to be 8 hours. The trainer flight's delayed because she's trying to fly in and out on the same day she's doing your training. Now our training's 4 hours long. Oh, we've left. We've signed the certificate. Okay. Oh, can I have the trainer come back? Yeah, it's going to be $3,500. It's going to be $5,000. Whatever. Know what that cost is. You need to ask the reps, am I going to need anything else in the room to perform this treatment? Then we find out we need loads of ultrasound gel. We need all these other durable medical supplies or disposable
different outlet or something.
Yep. 9 times out of 10, you're going to need an electrician to come in and run a 220. They're not going to tell you about that till you go to get it installed. I mean, again, these are all things when you add it all up. Now that $350,000 to buy, you're in it for $750,000. Do I believe that over 10 years, you're going to do $75,000 worth of laser treatments?
As one person, probably not.
Right. And a lot of times people get sold on this particular brand name device, and it is not any more clinically proficient than the ones that are out there that are $75,000 to $100,000. I think a laser in that price range is completely reasonable. You buy something that's $25,000 on the internet, it's probably no different than the devices that they're selling for home use. But anything in that, that's $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the modality, that's reasonable. I know what it costs to make these machines,
the markup's probably insane.
It's insane. So, I think just knowing, and there are some companies out there that will disclose it, and then there will be several that will not. And I will tell you, if your rep cannot be upfront and honest with you about one thing, they're lying to you about everything. So you got to ask those tough questions. I've worked for 2 companies where I've had demo equipment, like in a Sprinter van that I drove around and were able to plug my device in and show you my device. I've worked for one company that didn't provide demo equipment to their reps. I've sold it both ways. I've said, an IPL is an IPL is an IPL. Do you really need to try my device, or do you know how IPL works? But I've also, as a consultant, told everyone, if the devices are relatively similar in price from one manufacturer to the other, I would try them. Whether that means you have to go to another practice that the rep connects you with so you can get your hand on the device, look at the interface, see how it might fit in your room. Those are all things that can help narrow the field and make a decision. They're all going to do about the same thing. So I don't know. Also, I remember being frustrated as a rep. People would want to demo my laser hair removal device. And I'm like, what are we trying to achieve in that demo? Laser hair removal. Treatment. Right. Exactly. So laser hair removal takes 6 to 8 treatments. And so if you just want to see it, touch it, feel it, look at it, but doing the treatment we're not going to see a clinical endpoint. Now, IPL, CO2, erbium, RF microneedling, you're going to see the treatment and its outcome. So it's certainly worth, potentially doing a demo. But again, if they're unwilling to show you their device, and like I said, I've worked for a company where we didn't have devices to be able to do that, but I would always be able to call a doctor that I knew and say, can Kiana come in and just like with me one day, maybe during your lunch, and can I just show her real quick? If they can't even do that, I mean, again, it's what you're not saying, right? You don't know what you don't know, but you just have to be so careful, because I think it is in their best interest to just get you to sign the paperwork as fast as possible so that you don't ask those tough questions.
Gotcha. So you would actually not recommend anyone go through their financing at all?
So I have yet to meet a capital equipment financing firm that isn't predatory. There could be some out there, but every company I've worked for and every lender that I've worked with, the terms are not in your favor.
Are these the same lenders that people are using for other devices as well, like facial type devices?
They're all the same, unfortunately.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm learning so much today.
Time.
So now let's do the next step. So people got the financing through their own bank. They bought the device. They already had their 1 8-hour day of training, and they're ready to like launch the baby. So what are some big practice like mishaps that you see when people are trying to launch new offerings in their practice?
So this is just like everything we talked about in the last episode, and again, this is a hill that I'll die on. It's the clinical proficiency. So what ends up happening again is these devices, and the companies are doing you guys no favors. So it stinks. But I would say my tips for you would be if they can provide you the didactic training ahead of time so that you can go through and read Laser Physics 101 until you fall asleep 6 times a night, so you have a baseline understanding of what the chromatophores are and how the laser works, I would highly encourage you to do that. I think too much time is spent in that in-person training running through some slide deck that's like 1064 is attracted to hemoglobin, and that's how it dissipates the vessel. Okay, fine. You need to know all of that, but doing it ahead of time so that we can spend as much time as possible physically treating patients and knowing what the clinical endpoints are and how to adjust the settings. The other thing is that the clinicians that are going to come out to train you, they have to train you by what's in the manual. And I can tell you across the board with a lot of these devices, it is not just a plug and play. You can't just say, this is the milliseconds, this is the joules, hit somebody and that vessel's going to go away or that brown spot's going to lift. Every patient is different. You need to be able to know how deep is that vessel? How deep is that pigment? Is it superficial? Let me adjust the settings a little bit. Let me change this. Is that the clinical endpoint we're looking for? If we just do what's in the book and we don't know the nuance of how to change settings and make clinical judgments with these devices, you will always just have mediocre passable results. So you have to be able to know how to use these things. And that's when people tell me, when I sold lasers, I've tried that before, that IPL didn't work. I would smile and but I know it was not the IPL. It was the person whose hand it was in.
I think that's the other scary part for me watching is you are outside of those parameters most times when you're trying to get really good results. You're on that cusp of burning them. And you learn those nuances as the more people you treat. But time and time again, if you stay within the parameters, they likely won't see anything.
Or moderate. Right. And what happens is that you're not trained on that. You will not get trained on what is exactly the clinical endpoint we're looking for. We're also not trained on what to do if there's an adverse event. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had people call me after, because you will burn someone with a laser, just like you will drop a lid. It happens. It's how you handle it and having your SOP and knowing what to do and being prepared for it and knowing why it happened. Did we forget to drop the setting from the face to when we decided to do the neck where the skin's a little bit thinner? We should have dropped that setting a little bit. Oh, we didn't. We put the focuser on and we didn't change the jewels. That's, in understanding, but you're not getting the training. And that first day, it doesn't matter if it's a single device or it's a bunch of different hand pieces, you're drinking from a fire hose and you don't know what you don't know. And then you're starting to see patients and you're like, oh my God, I need more training, but the company's not going to provide it. Now I continue to try to find a third-party laser trainer that can go out and retrain people. And yeah, you still have to pay for them, but I could refer. I wish that there was, because everyone needs more laser training. Everyone I talk to, even people who've been doing this forever. And so if there's not that clinical confidence and you're not getting the results, again, this is that first step. We're not going to launch with any level of success.
essentially it's doing lots of hands-on. So are you recommending to people to give treatments away, basically doing it on your friends, family?
My number one key to success, in my opinion, with a device like that is knowing, okay, you're probably not gonna be able to get a clinical trainer for 4 weeks anyway, right? They're booked out. So my device is delivered, it's installed. My training might not be for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. Do not wait to get people on the schedule. And if that means that the day after your clinical training, you're closed a second day, and now the entire staff and yourself and your friends and family are all there and you are taking turn whatever, especially with multiple practitioners. But if it's just you have a full book of people, you are doing all of the different treatments. And I'm not saying you have to give them away, but you have to just have the hands on and you have to keep doing it. You have to make it muscle memory. And the more you see, that's what that looks like when that vessel is gone, or, oh, that's exactly what that's supposed to look like with a single pulse. Okay, now I've got it. Then you're going to become an expert. And then you're going to feel better about pushing the limits a little bit. You're better off pushing the limits on a FITS 1, 2, maybe a 3. I would not be pushing any limits on a 4, 5, or 6. And there are certain devices I wouldn't even use on a 4, 5, or 6. But you have to be prepared to treat patients immediately. There were a number of times where I sold someone a device. They were so excited about it. They were happy. They never called me to speak negatively about the experience. They're seemingly happy. So now I go back in 9 months later and I'm like, hey, you ready to buy another device for me? Okay, you bought the IPL before. Now I've got an RF microneedling. And they're like, oh, I got trained and then I haven't really seen anybody. And now I don't remember how to do the treatment. And then I'm like, okay, well, you're definitely not buying another laser from me then because you certainly haven't gained any revenue from it, but it happens a lot. I think it happens where people come in, they do the treatment, then we're waiting to launch this till 6 or 8 weeks later, a launch event. And then now maybe we're into summer and people aren't coming in as frequently for laser treatment. Now 9 months has gone by and we've maybe treated 5 people and we don't have that clinical confidence. So you have to just be seeing people right away. If you know you're buying the device, you can start putting things on social media, like new things coming. You can start doing model calls. You can start pre-selling packages, and you can plan to have a device launch event for just a week or two after and just get people excited. And boom, now you've made a ton of money. You feel really confident. You've seen everything. And maybe you just call up that trainer and say, okay, I feel really good about everything now. Hey, in your opinion, outside of the company, can I stack this with this? What's a good protocol for this with this? And they're going to feel confident giving you maybe some higher level, push the limit types of things because you've shown that you've treated a bunch of patients, you feel good, and you're ready to go to the next level. But it just doesn't always happen that way. If you have a full book of injectable clients and then you bring in a new service and we're introducing it and we have to find spots in Kiana's schedule to get these people in, then we might be seeing them few and far between. We're just not giving ourselves the time to fine tune those laser treatments as well. Your two foundational technologies is collagen stimulation and something for reds and browns, because that's what most patients are going to come to you for.
So I'm curious about this. I was thinking back to starting out, someone that's new, possibly they buy a device right away, and they're also looking at opening a space. On average, how much capital are you seeing people put up to start in this space? Like there's a high level of entry in terms of capital when people are starting out.
And I mean, I think doing what you did when you started and what a lot of my clients have done when they started is maybe start with one room and then when they grow out, they grow with intention, like we talked about. I would argue that unless you are a very wealthy person who has the ability to get 1 million to 1.5 worth of, backing to be able to do a build out, buy devices, staff your office, then the right thing to do is just get that salon suite, get that one room and just wait to do your devices. I have almost never seen individual practitioners who have gone and spent all of that money. They tend to close within 3 years or less because we've taken so much, like you said, really high amount of capital, loans, all of those things. And it's going to be really difficult to build up your clientele in less than 18 to 24 months. Plan to operate at a loss for a year. Plan to maybe break even by year 2. Hope that by year 3, you have the growth where you can maybe now, okay, I've grown out of my spot. Let's go look at maybe doing a build out now. or maybe I can hire someone to assist, or I get a second room in the salon, whatever it might be, or maybe it is a device. But spending all of that up front. I mean, again, I'm in Chicago, but in almost any large city, to get a space that's several thousand square feet, build it out, load it in. You're talking about things like you got to buy towels, you got to buy beds, you got to buy all of these things. You are going to be well into the $1 million. And that's probably not even with lasers.
So let's talk a little bit about staffing now, because if you even add that extra layer component on to staffing and paying someone, and then also possibly starting out by giving them benefits and, okay, maybe switching the topic from they're not going to be investing their money into a laser, but they want to invest their money into people. In discussing that and discussing managing people and developing contracts, I know that's probably even a completely different episode, but let's scratch the surface.
So, but when you're going to decide to bring somebody on, I think the first thing that you have to do, and again, I won't go into too much detail, but I think first things first is, what is it that you need them to be? Do you need them to be a support person for you so you can see more patients and generate more revenue? Or are we just looking for a revenue generating person? The mistake a lot of people make is trying to find some sort of hybrid unicorn. I'm going to hire an esthetician and make her work front desk. I'm going to hire an MA and make them work front desk. I'm going to hire an esthetician and have her do my social media. And just like we talked earlier, when you're the jack of all trades, you tend to be the master of none. And then you end up having to spend more of your time managing and delegating and micromanaging what you have delegated. And you have just now hamster wheeled yourself into, I'm spending more time with this person instead of whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing and what I hired them for. So I think a really important thing to focus on is, what am I going to get more bang for my buck out of? Is it going to be somebody who's going to come in and manage all of my admin and make sure that my phones are getting answered when I'm doing patients, someone who can room patients, check patients out so I can tighten up my schedule a little bit, see more people in that time? Or is it, all right, now I'm going to hire another RN, or I'm going to hire an esthetician who can bring in revenue in a different room that I have, and I can just keep doing what I'm doing? You have to decide what's going to work better for you. And it ends up being very different for everybody's business. I think the other thing people also forget is there is a lot of solutions out there from a tech standpoint and virtual. I mean, myself, everyone who works for me is either a chatbot or a virtual assistant, or they're not physically in my space, because there's so much we can do now with, all of these different sources out there. What's the roadblock in my business to success? Oh, it's the time I have to spend confirming people's appointments. Okay, maybe you need to get into a system that is scheduling online and auto sending them confirmations. All right, maybe the next roadblock is following up, calling patients to see how their treatment is and getting them to rebook. Or I'm so overwhelmed in the treatment room because I'm so booked up. I forget to tell them about other procedures. And when I check them out, I forgot to ask them for their alley rewards. Okay, maybe we need someone to take that stuff off your plate. So it depends on what the roadblock to your practice is. So that's very individual. But I think trying to find the right person and not try to create a unicorn who you're going to end up having to micromanage is really important. I have a really comprehensive calculators to figure this out for each individual person, but what does that labor cost translate into in terms of the amount of revenue you need to generate per hour to make that a productive and profitable addition to your team? And that's going to be different for everybody. It's going to depend on your overhead. It's going to depend on what you're paying them. It's going to depend on who they are. But I think really understanding those numbers, and like you mentioned, not just, I pay them $20 an hour. Okay. Are you also providing benefits? Will you be providing a 401k? Are you be providing paid vacation? Are we providing lunch for them? What are we all of those things that changes what the overall cost of hiring that person becomes, and having those numbers really dialed in so that you can make a profitable choice, right?
All these calculations, this is a lot of long-term planning, even going back to that first episode where we talked about having the entire onboarding checklist with all the little details of having that person set and ready to go before. So do you find that people actually have sat down and done these calculations to really consider bringing on someone based on the profit that they have to generate, as well as then also having the structure and the operation set up in place for that person to onboard correctly?
No, everyone's putting the plane together in the air in most cases. Unless they've come from a corporate or large med spa where there was probably a compliance manager and there was somebody who was in charge of hiring and someone who was in charge of training, where you've seen like that corporate setup and you're like, okay, I know that this is what I need to do to be successful. But no, 95% of my clients, I've come in and they have no idea. They actually have no idea if their employees are even profitable. It is a shock to people. I think they often think that if that labor cost is X, if that person is bringing in service revenue of 2X, they're a profitable employee. And that is not true. You are not a profitable employee minimally until 3X of what your labor cost is to what you're bringing in from a service revenue standpoint. And my most successful practices, their providers are 5X or more. So, and I have a practice recently who there are a few employees that are actually costing them more in what they pay them than what they bring in. And I don't know that all the time we are looking at reports, we're looking at analytics. Maybe we don't have a good EMR or CRM system where we're tracking these things. We're just doing things on paper. And just because you're cashing people out at the end of a service and at the end of the day, X amount of money is what you rang out, revenue is not profits.
I think, well, this is a whole nother episode as well.
Yeah.
Because in the land of aesthetics, I think majority of people run in that gross income, because at the end of the day, the net's so skewed sometimes based on the devices and your overhead and all of those things. Like technically you're going to be running in the negative, maybe indefinitely, like technically. And so I think that it's easy, or maybe easier to understand the gross profit, because at least at the end of the day, it makes you feel better.
Right. It doesn't give you a healthy financial picture. I've asked many people, I've even had clients who've come to me and I've had to be very clear in the prospecting piece, like in an initial discovery call, are you intending to make money and retire doing this? Or is this an expensive hobby for you? Because if it's just an expensive hobby, then I'm going to put you through a lot of pain in making you figure these things out. And in the end, if you don't like the result, maybe I'm not the right fit for you. Maybe this is just, you can keep flying by the seat of your pants and hope that it works out. But no, you have to have you have to have serious plans. I think if you think that you might hire someone, you need to have job descriptions, 8-week accelerated training program, all of that written out before we've put a post on our social. Because if you don't know who you're looking for, what you're going to ask them, and how you're going to train them and the time frame in which you're going to train them before you call them, then you're just going to hire the first person that vibes with you. And then they're going to come in the office and you're going to be friends and it's going to be great. We talked about growing with intention. If those first few employees are not doing things the way we need them to do, our customer service begins to suffer. And then as we grow, it just is, we're growing and growing. And that base is so shaky.
Do you find that when people get hired on, because I think that, like you're saying, that's the majority is, you get hired on based on the connection, the personality, maybe the vibes. And then you get thrown into where they tell you to be a unicorn and you have to do all these other jobs that are maybe not in the description or what was chatted about. Do you find that that's where a lot of the turnover comes to, because there's a lack of transparency and like a expectation?
Especially with injectors, I think if as an owner, if you are going to hire an additional injector, whether you're an owner or an injector yourself, or you're going to hire someone, if that person is also going to be responsible for supply ordering, answering phones, checking patients in and out, cleaning toilets, mopping floors, you need to tell them that before you bring them on. You have to be very transparent, because there may be some people who are like, I'm not into that. I want to come in, I want to inject, I want to leave. I have no interest in the other things. And that you should know. I say this all the time. I think you should hire slow. They say hire slow, fire fast. I don't know if you have to fire so fast. I think some people are coachable, but you shouldn't hire the first person that has a nice resume. You should interview a bunch of people, more than one interview, and you should absolutely expect the person to come in and do a working day with you, because the person is going to be the best they ever are in their interview. And so you need to see how they are. Do they seem comfortable around patients? Like, do they vibe with the other gals in the office? Like, whatever it might be, you need to see that right away. And then in the onboarding, we need to be training people to do things exactly the way that they're supposed to be doing them. And also letting people know, like, these are the metrics that show me that you are successful at this training. And if within these 90 days, if it just doesn't seem like it's working out, with all due respect, we may move on. And it surprises me. I know when you and your colleagues, everybody says it's so hard to find good people. I mean, I know that to be the case. I have clients who have hired nurses, and within that first 3 months, there's 17 family emergencies, and we've had a flat tire, and we're late. And, if that person within that 90 days is not the absolute best version of themselves, it goes downhill from there. But if you have not properly trained them, then that's just on you. If you have not set the expectation that this is the policies, here's my employee handbook. This is our attendance policy, our call off policy, our leave early policy. If you don't have all of these operational things in place, if you don't have that foundation, then it's just, things can fail along a lot of different places. So yeah, you have to plan in advance. It can't just be one night you're like, oh gosh, maybe I should put an ad on LinkedIn and then think, oh, we're going to be good from here.
Yeah. Well, we scratched the surface on like so many different topics, but I think that at the end of the day, listeners can really understand that there's so much that goes into this, and it's very meticulous planning that needs to be thought through, just beyond wanting to own something that's yours or picking the brand or doing whatever you want. I think that this was a great conversation just to put those steps in place for people to understand that. I mean, even talking to you, I'm like, I've got some work to do on some things. So, and
We
I'm a
all
team
do.
of one. So, you
We
know what I
all
mean? I feel as a business owner, that list never shortens. We always are just adding more things to it. And I think that's a good thing for certain personalities, but other personalities, it's not great. But I don't want to take too much more of your time, but it sounds like we do need to have you back. So if other people are like, oh my gosh, I want to listen to Rebecca talk for hours, we have to do a mini series and like really dive into specific components, because obviously 2 hours of recording just isn't enough.
If there's any topic that they're like dying to hear about, I'm happy to accommodate. And I would love to do a series. I always enjoy talking to you.
Perfect. Okay, well, tell everyone where that they can find you, either on socials, LinkedIn, where they can get in contact with you if they're like, hey, Rebecca, I need help.
So the name of my company is Apex, APEX Aesthetic Consulting, and it's apexaestheticconsulting.com and Apex Aesthetic Consulting on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've connected with a lot of people. I've been on LinkedIn for my entire career. So I'm a little newer at some of the social stuff. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but you can book a free discovery call on my website. It's right in the services page, and my bio's there, but you could definitely reach out on Instagram as well.
Right. And that was a wrap on episode 3 of season 6 for the podcast. Thank you again, Rebecca, for coming on the podcast today, spending 2 hours with me sitting and chatting. I really, really appreciate it. If you guys want to find more information on the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at aesthetic.chatwithkiki. You can find my Instagram, which is aestheticnurse.kiki. And you can also find more information on our website, which is aestheticnursekiki.com. So excited for you guys to hear the rest of this season. We have some great guests coming up. So continue to listen to this season, and we'll chat soon. Bye.